Well, first off, thank you for doing this. It's
Hey, thank you.
yeah. So I'm gonna kind of keep it light and not such like an interview. Well, I mean, it will be, but you know what I mean. Like more, we can kind
Yeah,
of go wherever the hell this takes us because it's more
that's kind of
just
like, cause yeah,
because
that's cool. That's great.
there is a good amount of stuff that I don't know about you. And honestly, I guess for the benefit of the people that are going to be watching this, it's, important to note that like we ended up being hooked up essentially because I'm a massive Metallica fan.
Right.
And so that's, how you came onto my radar. And I know that
Oh,
not long ago, yeah, not long ago you did an interview with H on his podcast. And
yeah.
I have to admit, I only listened to a little bit of that. And so
Which
it's,
one though? Because he interviewed me for the Motorcast because I'd worked for Motorhead for about 9 years, and then
yeah,
we got in contact with each other. And then he was like, "Man, I had such a good chat with you. Let's do something for my other podcast, the Talking Bollocks." And I'm like, "Yeah, that
yeah,
sounds
that
like
was it.
fun."
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And H is awesome. Like I do the podcast with him as well, and it's a blast. But
yeah.
also that's a different thing for me because I'm actually a big Acid Rain fan. So it's like getting to do
There you go.
a podcast with somebody that I admire. But in this particular case, like I started to think about because when from the stuff that I've heard you talk about and the things that I've seen that you've done online
Yeah.
for different bands, the one that seems like the most like I have a long memory with this is that Captains of Crunch
Yeah.
image. And if I remember right, because I was, I got first introduced to Metallica around 88 or 89, but I was like, 11-year-old kid. And the video for one, I was like, this is a little bit scary. I don't know if I'm ready for this
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
But by the time 91 came around and I was a 13-year-old kid and I was all over them. But the one thing that I remember is I think it was in 1993. Now correct me if this is like way too early for this, but
No.
I have a memory of around 93. I had become such a big fan that anytime any book was released on Metallica, I would buy it and I would read it. And there was one that was
Oh,
called Metallica Unbound. And I
Unbound by
put
KJ.
and I'm pretty sure that Captains of Crunch image is in that book. Is that too early?
It
93?
is. Actually, let me see. I got it right. Well, I just so happen to have it right here.
Nice.
Not like I'm got a big ego or anything, but I actually, I'm very similar. Probably about 10 years older than you,
Okay.
and 13 was my sweet spot. Mine was when falling into a band, and it was AC/DC. I went and saw Back in Black
Oh shit.
tour. 13 years old.
Yeah.
That bell came down. Brian Johnson smacked it with a sledgehammer, and Angus jumped off the Marshall stack, and that's it. The hook was in the mouth, and I'm down the street.
Hell yeah.
I think this came out. Yeah, it was probably about 92, 93.
Okay. So
This
so
one,
yeah,
right?
that's it. Yeah, yeah. That was
Oh yeah,
that was the second Metallica book I read. There was another one that was like a paperback, smaller one. I don't remember who wrote that one, but it didn't have a bunch of photographs in it. But at that point I was so, into them, but it's just funny that that's an image that I always remembered. And then now 30 years down the line, I'm all like, oh, I'm talking to the dude that not only did this, but we'll get into it.
yeah,
Other
yeah, yeah.
stuff.
Oh,
So
that's cool
really,
because I think as a, I mean, I'm we're both fans of Metallica, so
mhm.
straight up. And my introduction to the band was about the time you saw, essentially that, or shortly thereafter, that when I did that design, and I can tell you the story about how I literally fell ass over tea kettle backwards into get landing like a dream gig with Metallica when I was really just kind of like playing tongue in cheek, just like whatever. I'm goofing on. I had a job. I was working. They wanted me to design a billboard to advertise that show. That's how that came up. But
Well,
I can explain it further
let's
whenever you
do
want to get into it.
yeah, let's use that as kind of a teaser. Like, hey guys out there, we'll get to that story. But
Oh
the
yeah,
thing
yeah.
I'm more interested in, because I know that you also kicked around with a lot of the Bay Area bands in the 80s. Am I correct in that?
You're
And
absolutely, yeah. I grew up with a lot of those guys. Like I went to high school for 1 year with Alex Skolnick,
oh,
who was
sweet.
in the band called Legacy.
Yeah.
And on the manager's kitchen table, I would design flyers for Legacy, and then they had me paint a backdrop for them. And there's a whole big story behind that. But I mean, like, Alex was the one told me to, because I wanted to play guitar too, because I thought I saw everybody doing this stuff, and I was like,
Yeah.
man, you guys are all, no one had played on a stage yet except for Exodus, and we'd go see Exodus and stuff like that. But that, anyway, that introduction to those guys, and I worked for this band called Law's Rocket.
Oh,
There was a
yeah.
local
Yeah.
band, and the Ruffians and Exodus and Legacy, which became Testament. I knew
Mhm.
all the Death Angel guys. I went to go see Violent shows, so Rob Flynn and I were kind of friends.
Mhm.
And Rob invited me to the original house party when he broke Violence up and did the launch of Machine Head. I got invited. I was living across the street, and he was like, "Dude, you got to come over and see my new band." I mean, the Bay Area was just this little epicenter of really just a bunch of ragtag kids that were all friends. So I
But
mean,
it's
yeah, that the '80s was that was yeah, it was a cool
well,
time, but none of us
yeah.
thought it was going to be cool. We were
Well, it
just
ended
like,
up,
oh man, we miss Zeppelin, fuck, we
yeah.
suck.
It's become over the years for fans like me, it's like our Motown or something like that, like the Bay Area, or all of these groups, because I mean, like, obviously there were other ones from other regions, but that seemed to be, the birthplace. But I guess
One of them.
bringing us back to where we were is so was Legacy the first time that you were asked to do art for a band, or was there anything prior to that?
Um, Legacy was shortly after I had originally. So I'll back it up.
Sure.
As a kid, kind of, I had seen AC/DC,
Mhm.
and when I was, still in, I guess it would be called. It was junior high. It was just after junior high, really.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm going into a high school where all of a sudden, I'm like this very small ant in a big sea storm. Typical kid who was like, I liked what I liked, but I wanted to fit in, but I didn't really give too much a care about it. But I really liked these bands that nobody seemed to really, at least in the school yard, were not really caring about.
Mhm.
Uh, at least when I was in junior high. So they were kind of all into like disco and rap and stuff like that. There were a couple people that were like into Aerosmith and stuff like that. But I always liked to draw. So I was drawing little, caricatures or whatever I was drawing. And then I started going up to this place called Telegraph and buying records. So I get these records and I start looking at the albums and I said, ooh, I want to draw some of these logos because they're
Yeah.
kind of cool and they're some of my favorite bands. And that kind of, at first, my mom was like, she was full on just like, do whatever you want to do, creatively. Just, you know, we know you kind of suck at school. So, get into where, you start feeling like you can express yourself. So I started drawing all over my bedroom walls and I would draw the logos of all these bands.
Mhm.
And like, of course, a buddy of mine was all into Iron Maiden and he turned me on to Killers when that came out. I went down to Telegraph, bought the record, and of course, so I start drawing eddies on everything, and I'm drawing it all over my walls, and then it started going onto my books, on my book covers and stuff. And then we used to get these. We go down to the Army surplus store and get cheap, just shirts, shirts, jackets. We were kind of broke, so anyway, we would do that. But you could draw all over them because they were so cheap. You're like, well,
Mhm.
what the hell? So I used to draw like AC/DC, the Swan Song, Iron Maiden, uh, couple other Scorpions or whatnot. Got, as I started evolving, listening to different kinds of groups, more metal, and the imagery was getting darker and kind of cooler looking, I would draw all over my jacket. And that was about the summer before I started high school. And the first day of high school, I was like expecting to be total outcast. And I walk onto campus with this jacket, and I see all the cool kids, all the older kids sitting on the steps. And I'm walking by, and all of a sudden I get, "Hey kid, come over here." And I'm like, "Uh-oh, I'm already going to get beat up on the first day." I go over there, and they're all, "Who did that Aerosmith thing on your jacket?" And I said, "I did." And he goes, "I love Aerosmith. So, what could you draw one on my jacket?" "Sure. How much it'll cost?" And I was like, I don't know. What do you got?" And he was, "Well, I got 2 tickets to see Aerosmith." And I'm like, "All right, shit, yeah, I'll do that." So, it became like, I wouldn't call it a business, but it became like my calling card, kind of like that jacket. I would get, someone would tell somebody, "Hey, that guy that did my Black Sabbath, demon on the back of my jacket, that's that guy. Ask him about your Van Halen logo," or whatever it was. And it kind of started in the high school where people were like, and I found my acceptance.
Yeah.
I found my little niche. I found like, well, cool. I'm not going to have anything on my jacket that says like Seals and Crofts or Barry Manilow or the Go-Go's or something like that. So I'm not going to be drawing that crap. I'm going to draw my crap. and that people dug it. So it kind of grew from there, as far as the idea of like, wow, I could do art, some kind of art. And it was my kind of gateway into that. And then, sorry, this is going to be elongated, but it
That's all
tees
right.
it all up. Is essentially, I was a kid, I was a fan, and I'm go get stoned at the park across the street from the high school, and the older kids would hang out after school, and some of the other kids from around the other schools, the older kids, would come by over there, and they'd see my jacket, and some of them were in bands. And this one guy was in this band, Law's Rocket. And I had kind of heard about him, but when you're a kid, you're like, you don't really know the club scene. I mean, you're skateboarding around town, you look up at marquees, but you're looking up at marquees where there's mostly 21 and over.
Yep.
Some were 18 and over, but for the most part, I was too young. So I just, if I saw Yesterday and Today on a marquee, I go, "Oh, okay, I heard of you." Law's Rocket, right over my head. So I was like, whatever. Too, we're talking about a period of time from like 82 to like 84, where, I mean, the genesis of all the different bands that came into my view. Granted, I was about a year late, but that was my introduction because I was so young. All these guys were like taking me into shows, sneaking me into the Keystone Berkeley or Ruthie's in. Ruthie's was actually cool because you could go in there. Doesn't matter what age you were. In fact, you could probably buy a drink. Most of the time they would sell you drinks, and there were a bunch of us young kids that were in there. Ruthie's was like kind of like the poor man's metal show. So you'd have all your friends that were in bands trying to make it come on up. And Law's Rocket would never play there because we're big time. We play in the Keystone Berkeley. They got like, you can get 150 people in there. And
interesting.
Like, so and they had pyro, which was really a bunch of firecrackers shoved into a coffee can at the beginning of the stage. They had dry ice machines, and
well, then when they started out, they were not thrash. At least the first album to me doesn't sound thrash at all. So I kind of get that they were on a different trip in the beginning.
They were, but they were like kind of like, they were like the Kiss of the local rock scene. They were like, you look back, you're a Metallica fan, you look back at those old flyers, Metallica opened for Laz Rocket. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the kind of local power that Laz Rocket had. National Act comes in, yeah, forget about it. Laz Rocket would open, but they would be the picked band because they had somewhat of a following and they had a
Yeah.
stage presence. And but yeah, it was like this was at a time where people weren't really thinking thrash. I mean,
Yeah.
it was like metal, more generic, kind of closer to your Iron Maidens and Judas Priests, where those aren't thrash, but it was a harder rock. And that's where I think, and production value obviously was coming into play.
Hmm.
That was Law's Rocket. And compares to like when Metallica hit the scene and made it up there, I mean, their production value was almost zero,
Yeah.
but they didn't need it because they had the X factor. Something about them were like, nah, this is great. They don't need the bells and whistles. Law's Rocket, you guys kind of need the bells and whistles. And even so, even with the bells and whistles, it was just a show. I mean,
Hmm.
Exodus would open for them, and so they started building a little bit more of a following and more people, and they really kind of came into their own. They were kind of latecomers, late, not latecomers. They just kind of didn't get a following until after the Law's Rockets and some of these other bands.
Yeah.
But then they really started coming into their own. That's why Exodus will always be like the Bay Area. That there are Raiders.
Yeah.
They would have been that Bonded by Blood would have come out at around the same time as Kill 'Em All, hadn't it not been for just the foibles of the music industry and them getting jammed up on a album cover design and all this stuff. So anyway, so I started working for Law's Rocket. They asked me, say, hey, have you ever done stage set stuff? And I was like, no, I've just done these jackets, but I'm willing to try.
Yeah.
Oh, you can do that. You can do this. So they would have me come over to the manager's house and I'd paint these backdrops, or I'd paint like little skeletons on their stage sets and stuff like that. And that was interesting, but not really like it didn't really it gave me an idea about being more of a band artist as opposed to just some guy that draws on the backs of jackets.
Yeah.
And he would have me do flyers, and from going to those shows and being introduced around and building what one would call, kind of a hand to mouth resume, I kind of did the same thing with the, word of mouth with my jackets. It became, oh, you the guy that did those skeletons on the Law's Rocket stage. It's like, yeah. Oh, well then I'm starting this band. It's called the Ruffians. Do you think you could do us a logo? Do you think you could do us flyer? And then Exodus and some of the guys like they introduced me to this guy Alexis Olson, and he managed Legacy.
Mm-hmm.
And he called me up and he goes, I know you're friends with Alex at high school. Would you do some flyers for us? So I was like, yeah. And then they started asking me to do backdrops, and and I was just a kid living at my folks' house. I was like I think at the time I was a sophomore in high school. I was about 15, maybe 16.
Mm-hmm.
And I would get these black bed sheets at Poppy Fabrics for like $5. They're not huge, but on the stage at Ruthie's, that's big enough. You just turn it on its side or whatnot. So I'd paint these banners or backdrops for the bands, and Legacy was one. They wanted a silver pentagram and then this skull and their logo. But they wanted the pentagram to be silver, so when the light hit it, it would like kind of shimmer and give it. But that stuff went right through the fabric, and they came to pick up the backdrop, and on my mom's living room floor, all that ink just went right into the floorboards, and they were like, "Damn, you're gonna be in trouble." So they, folded it up, and they him and Eric scooted out of there as fast as they could. And I'm like, damn, I dropped down. I'm like scrubbing on my hands and knees trying to get this, 7 foot, 6 foot pentagram out of my mom's hardwood floor. She comes in. She's like, "What goes on when I'm not here?" And I'm like, "Oh, Mom, no, no, don't worry. It was a backdrop." What? What are you talking about? I don't see any backdrop. So anyway, it became kind of fun and funny, and I was a kid, so I didn't.
Yeah.
I still don't really know what I'm doing, but you kind of keep faking it until you make it,
Sure.
and just word of mouth came in because nobody cared that I screwed up my mom's floors. They just saw this banner at the oh, who did that? Oh, this guy, and so the word of mouth kind of got around, and then Metallica came up, and I got a couple chances to see those guys, and every time I would kind of approach them because they were really approachable, but they were already kind of getting that kind of star status locally.
Yeah.
So everyone's kind of vying for their attention, especially the other bands, because they want to be taken on tour. And here I'm just a kid trying to do a flyer, so I go up to Hetfield and I go, "Hey, I saw your backdrop at the Kabuki and it looked really cool. And hey, do you think I could do one for you?" And he goes, "Well, we got that one, and we like it pretty much. So, thank you, but no thank you." Oh, okay. And I don't know shit. So I'm just like, okay,
Yeah.
never mind. And I'm like wandering off, and my friends would go, "Come on, man, you got to keep asking them, got to keep bugging them. You never know." And this went on for a couple of years. And, as it kind of went on, I was doing my own thing and kind of, trying to figure my way around, the little stuff I would do. I did some stuff for Bailoff when he got left Exodus or got kicked out, depending on how you look at it or who you ask or whatever. But anyway,
Yeah.
So I kind of held on to it for a little longer and, but still always kind of keep it into my, I keep wanting, I had no mentor, I had a few mentors, but no real game plan. It's like, all I could think of was I really liked design. I wanted to learn how to design t-shirts, and I had done a couple logos that wound up on shirts, but they were like, or I drew some stuff for a band and they put it on a shirt, but I had no real control over the concept. I would write at the back of Guitar Player magazine or Musician. They'd have an interview with the music merchandiser, and I was like, wow, there's a job, that's a career. I want to do that. And I'm about 17, maybe get moving on to 18. But most of those guys, I don't know. All I do is sell t-shirts, if they even wrote you back. And I would write these letters. I used to write to the AC/DC fan club. I'm sure they were laughing at them all and just tacking them up and never heard back from them. But like, this goofy kid wants to know, does Angus like wear that little outfit all the time? I think I even asked a long time ago, I was like, he doesn't really have a tail or something stupid. I don't know what I was trying to think about. But anyway, so I would write these letters. I would type them out on my mom's typewriter and send them off. And every once in a while, one of the merchandising guys would get back to me, but they did, we get the art from somebody and I don't even have a part of that. All I do is sell t-shirts, kid. And I'm like, all right. So pretty much had no guiding light on that one.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of had it in my head that I wanted to design shirts. And then I fell into Tower Records. A friend of mine was working at Tower Records making these billboards, these in-store billboards. And so I pester him because he said, "Oh, it takes a lot of talent to cut this foam board, and we hand cut everything." I was like, "Well, I want to try it. I want to learn." And he kind of pissed me. It was kind of pushing me away, but I would keep coming back and asking questions. And finally, one day, he was like, "Yeah, I'll give you a shot." So I tried out, got the gig. And next thing I know, I'm working at Tower Records. I was, I think, 20 at the time. And, uh, and I was making these displays and I was learning how to, you know, kind of the connection between doing art and music was still there,
Hmm.
but it was getting fostered and I was starting to understand a little bit more about layout and all that junk. And then long way around the point, I come back around. It's 80, about 88, and Metallica. Well, at first they did the Cliff 'Em All
Yeah.
video, and I was working at the video store, so I made a display of that. But then And Justice for All came out, and they were going to be playing at the Cow Palace in December of that first run of the first tour, and of that tour. And there was a contest, and it's like make a billboard in the front window of Tower Records, a Metallica design, and win a pair of tickets to the show. So I was trying to figure out what I was going to do because I'm sure everybody was just going to put posters up or cut the logo out or whatever. So I was trying to think of something unique. And at the time, somebody had written an article about them saying that Metallica was it's not thrash, it's not metal, it's like crunch metal because they had this chunk, 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 chunk
Yeah.
guitar.
Yeah.
So they called it crunch metal. And I'm like, oh, they're like the Captains of Crunch. And then I'm like, okay, the Captains of Crunch, Captain Crunch. So I did a Captain Crunch box, and Pushead had drawn their faces on this hammer, the Hammer of Justice,
Yeah.
and it was in the album packaging. So I kind of redrew it and I blew it up, and then I redrew it out again onto foam board, and I cut it out and I put little pirate hats on them, and I made this essentially it was about a 6.5 foot tall cereal box out of this foam core stuff. Painted it all up, put the date on it, and shoved it in the front window, this big old cereal box. And I got outside and I took a photo of it, sent it off to somebody at Elektra, and I guess the joke was missed or whatever. But I was like, no, I don't think I won or got a ticket or anything. But I was a fan, so I'm going to
Yeah.
go see the show. I tried, but I guess that was a really stupid left to center thing to do. So I don't hear nothing about it. I'm like, all right, whatever. And I go to the show, and I got a photo of it in my pocket just in case I get to meet them for whatever reason. Maybe they'll sign it, think it's stupid, beat me up. I don't know. And I got
Yeah.
it in my pocket. And I had grown up with a lot of these guys in the Bay Area, and some of them were actually in a band called Spastic Children, who
Hmm.
played every once in a while with Kirk, and Cliff was in the band for a while, and so was Hetfield. Uh, but I had gotten to know some of the other guys just by hanging around at Ruthie's Inn.
Yeah.
Some of them I was terrified of, like Fred Cotton. He would just torture kids. Uh, but we kind of got along because I was like, well, I'm not gonna fall for any of his pranks or whatnot. But anyway, I got introduced from other people, so he was like, all right, you're cool, whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, and he turned out to be one of the sweetest guys you ever want to meet. So anyway, I was at the show, and show was great. I was in the pit. I came out of there just soaking wet. And in my pocket, I still had that picture. And I'm like, I'll go around to where the backstage area is and see if I can, see if anybody I know that's always talked them up or whatever could get me in. Nobody. There's nobody there.
Yeah.
Just a guy sitting in a chair going, you can't come back here, kid. And I'm like, all right, all right. So I'm just hanging out, and I wait for about 10 or 15 minutes. And then I'm like, man, this ain't working out. So I turn around, and all of a sudden I hear DeVito, and I turn around, and it's Cotton, Fred Cotton from Spastic. And he's like, DeVito, what are you doing here? I go, oh, I was trying to get back there. And he goes, what you want to do back there? I go, I want to see if they think this is funny. And I gave him the picture. And he's looking at it. And he's like, oh, they'll fucking love this. And he goes, wait right here. And he go back inside. And like 10 minutes go by. And I'm like, man, he's drunk. He probably threw it away or said, nah, that's stupid. And, tossed it or whatever. And so again, I turn around and I start walking out, and I'm almost out like the front door, and I hear DeVito like in the hallway. And I come running back, and he's all, get in here. And he grabs me by the collar, pulls me in there. He goes, man, they fucking love this thing. And I go, you're kidding me. And next thing I know, it's like a blur. Then he drags me over to Hetfield, and he drags me over to Jason, and then to Kirk, and they're signing it and laughing there. And Lars is like grilling me. He goes, "What is this? What is this?" And I go, "It's a big old cereal box in the window of Tower Records." He goes, "You mean to tell me that what Tower Records? Which one?" And I'm all in Berkeley, and he goes, "You mean to tell me that this is a real thing and this is in a window somewhere?" And I go, yeah. And he goes, who made it? What is it? And I go, I made it. It was supposed to be an ad for your show. And he goes, how did you come up with this? And I go, fuck, I don't know, man. I thought it was funny, And I didn't know if he was grilling me because he's like going to sue me. Or...
Yeah. Well, at that point, I don't think he didn't have that reputation at that point. I don't think.
No, not quite yet. But the way he was grilling me, I mean, it planted a seed. I was like, okay, be careful what you say now. And I'm like, no, he goes, can I have it? I said, yeah, you can come and grab it, man. I don't care. The show's over. It's going down. I'm not taking that shit home. And he's like, okay. And he's like, man, that's awesome. Everybody, they were just very kind, very, enthusiastic. It really came down to it. Was like, I've been bugging you guys for years trying to do a flyer for you, and now you think that that's cool. And I was just like, I was kind of it was a goof, kind of. I was just having fun. But just like most of my career, it was like, okay, I'm gonna go this direction. What? That's the right direction? You got to be kidding me. I'm like, okay, they were drunk. Now, that a couple of weeks go by and nothing. Mm-hmm. Not thinking, well, no one's going to be flying back off a tour that they just started just to get this. But Lars came to my work, and he came upstairs, and he's like, where is this thing? And I'm all, it's right there in the corner. And top of my head's kind of blowing off, and I'm like, holy cow. Yeah. He actually came in to get this thing. And he goes, where? And I go, it's that big thing in the corner. And he's all, oh shit, it is big. And I go, I told you it was a billboard. I go, what do you drive? And he goes, I just bought a brand new Porsche. I go, ain't no way that's gonna fit in the Porsche. So he was just like, it was all excitement. Then it was like, oh, and he's shaking his head. And I go, hey, I can make you a small one. You can just put it in your backseat of your car. It'll take me a couple days. He goes, you do that for me? I said, I will do that. And I said, you like that? That makes me happy. I'll make a little small one. That's what I do. I'll just make one. So he was like, all right, maybe I'll come back in a week, man. And I'm like, okay. And at this point, I'm thinking maybe he really will come back. So I make this little small one. It's just a little, maybe about 1.5 feet tall. Mm-hmm. I laid it out on because when I had originally done it, I had drawn it up. I kind of looked at the design that Pushead drew, and I, kind of copied the faces exactly, but with bigger dots because it was going to be blown up. Yeah. And I couldn't get that fine because it was only about that big on the back of the album cover or in the inside sleeve. So I had drawn it out as a layout to blow it up on this projector to cut it out big and proportionate. So when he came to pick it up, I gave him the little one and I gave him the layout that I'd used to blow up. And I said, I'm really glad you like that. And he goes, no, it's cool as hell. And he said, hey, when we come back around, I'll get you backstage and we'll hang out. And I'm like, oh, that sounds great.
Mhm.
Thinking he gonna forget all about this or whatever it is, but there it is. And then about a month or so later, watching the ground, and Jason, they did one that the scary video one that
Yeah.
you were like, I don't think, and it was kind of
It's pretty
creepy.
intense.
It is intense. It is intense. They were doing they got nominated for a Grammy on that one, first one they played, and Jason like comes onto the screen and he's wearing a shirt of that design, and that, I mean, if my head hadn't exploded before, it definitely exploded then, and
Yeah,
I
because
just
now
couldn't
like
believe
millions
it.
of people saw it at that point.
At that, yeah, and I'm like, maybe they saw it, but I mean, it was like, what the oh my god, I couldn't believe it that there was actually they printed a shirt of it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm calling my friends up, dude, I did a shirt for Metallica. Yeah, right, whatever. And they're hanging up, and I'm, no, go look on it. Like, yeah, whatever. Nobody's gonna believe that. And then, like, I think they were in LA for that, and then they came up like 2 or 3 days later. He come back to my work, tosses me a bunch of crew shirts, the Captain's Crunch shirts.
Mhm.
And he goes, dude, that was killer, man. Thanks so much. And I'm like, no problem. And I was like, holy cow. And he goes, what do you want for the design? And I'm like, I don't know. It's a crew shirt, right? And he goes, yeah, we're not selling or nothing. So I was like, I don't know. Give me a tour jacket or
Two
something.
tickets to
Good luck.
Aerosmith.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much. Yeah. Well, that was another thing that just became a joke between me and him. Anyway, he was like, yeah, I'll get you a tour jacket. And he got my size or whatever. And a couple weeks later, he rolls up and he goes, hey, we're playing at the Shoreline Amphitheater or Sacramento Cal Expo or something. And he goes, you want to go? And I'm like, yeah, I'll go. That sounds killer. So he gave me the jacket, and I'm like, going to the Cal. The night of the Cal Expo was pouring rain, and he called and he no wait. So he said, hey, do you want to go to the Cal Expo and see us? And I said, yeah. And he said, I'll put you on the list. And he goes, how many guests do you need? And I'm all, guests? What do you mean guests? And he was just like, well, if you got some friends who want to go. And I go, well, I think all my friends got tickets. And he's like, well, there's got to be somebody else you want to invite or something. And what if they don't have a ticket? And I'm like, okay, give me plus another person. And he starts to get frustrated because he's like, dude, I'll give you 10 tickets. I'll give you 50 tickets if you want. And I'm like, I don't need 50 tickets. I don't want. And he got more and more pissed at me because I was like, no, I just need the one. I just need one ticket, And anyway. So it's pouring rain the day of the show. I'm calling all my friends, going, dude, I got like, Lars said I'm gonna get a bunch of tickets, and they're like, Lars said when? And I'm like, about a week ago. And he goes, it's pouring rain. If I drive all the way out to Sacramento with you, which is about an hour outside of the Bay Area, and we get out there and ain't no tickets, I'm gonna kick your ass. And I'm like, well, he said there would be, and so anyway, I found one person that was willing to take the risk.
Mhm.
So we drove out there, and sure enough, man, I go up to the thing. It's pouring rain. I'm on Mark DeVito, and the lady's eyes go, oh my god! And she just hands this, like, I mean, it's like a billfold wallet, an envelope, and it barely goes underneath the little thing, and there's like 10, 15 tickets, backstage passes, after show. I mean, it's shoved to the hilt. Like Lars was trying to drive a point home. Like,
Yeah.
no, I say I'm gonna give you some. Anyway, I thought it was funny. I wound up just like handing out the tickets to people in line because I was
Yeah.
like, I knew this was gonna happen. That I'm not gonna have anybody who wants to go. But that kind of started that kind of, you know, a weird relationship with that band, which was Lars would call me up, ask me to design some, and I'd bring it to the show. So I started learning how to like make presentation boards, and this is my concept and this is the idea, except I would draw it all out, and then they'd have me colorize it or whatever. And I started learning from sending stuff to the merchandise companies, slowly but surely, how to put together a professional T-shirt logo design and all
So
that.
what was the first official thing that you did for them after them asking you to do it? Do you remember what it was?
Uh, it was the first. Well, I mean, they had made laminates of that design, the Captain's Crunch, as
Sure.
well.
Yeah.
So, but again, that wasn't asked of me. They just kind of commandeered it, which is
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I didn't raise a fuss, because that gets me more recognition for any other thing that really and it was the silliest thing I did. But the first, I think, for the Black Album,
Hmm.
when the Black Album came out, uh, well, Lars had always said, "Hey, keep bringing stuff, bringing stuff." And I had done, I think it was the second design. It was like for the Black Album had just come out, and they wanted to do a crew shirt. And he goes, "Come up with something that's as good as Captain's Crunch." And I'm like, you know, I have no idea how I'm going to do that.
What cereal am I going to do this time?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, and I think he was even said no more, no like breakfast foods or something. But it was like, I did trails we have crept
Okay.
for, and so I did like a comic book cover and kind of drew caricatures of them, but I wasn't very good at drawing faces. So like James is looking away. Uh, Jason's got a mask on. Lars has got a tennis racket in front of his face. Because I told him I don't do caricatures. So
Yeah.
anyway, I had to learn how to do something of that. Uh, so that was the second one. And I would get, hey, bring some stuff to the show. We're playing at the Open Coliseum. And I would draw on these big illustration boards. They were like, 18 inches by 24 inches, but like hard cardboard. So bring some stuff to the show was like, I'm hauling these big boards under my arm and
Yeah.
wanting to go into the crowd at the same time, because
Yeah.
I'm a fan. I want to see. So it's like, I'm wrestling them into the crowd, and then I realize, oh, these are going to get destroyed. So I'd go back, and there'd be a laminate or something waiting for me, at the will call, and I would wait and go back and sit with Lars, and he'd look at stuff, and he picked that one after a couple of times I had done some stuff. And even just before that, actually, when they played in Petaluma, I had done the foam core. I took Pusshead's the One Baby, and I had made it out of foam core.
Okay.
Did a big puzzle cut thing. And Kirk wanted it, and I traded him tickets to the Petaluma shows for it. So he gave me both nights, tickets to see the shows in Petaluma, which was just before they did the Madison Square Garden listening party, and then the Black Album came out.
Gotcha.
But he didn't ask me to do that. I just did it, but I would bring designs, and Lars would look at them and sign them, or go, yeah, that's cool, but we don't need it, or whatever. And then he called me about the trails. he goes, "Hey, why don't you bring some more designs to that show?" So I drew up some stuff, and Trails We Have Crept, and then at the end of the Blackout, at the end of the tour, I did End of the Rome, Time to Go Home, and that was kind of like, they were whatever Lars was into, like that wasn't music. That was what he was going to do when he got off tour. So I did these like magazines like Hetfield and Stream. I knew he liked hunting. So I did
Yeah.
Hetfield and Stream, and then Lars, like the undersea world of Lars Cousteau or whatever it was. And Kirk reading comic books and Jason playing basketball or something, or he got his hair cut and everybody flipped out. So I did these, I started doing, kind of getting to be known as the guy that would do the goofy crew shirts for
Yeah.
them. And it worked. And Lars was, very encouraging, very friendly. And since then I had done like stuff. I did the stuff when they played Donington for the first time, or not the first time, the second time, but they were headlining Donington. I did like a Thin Lizzy shirt because I knew Hetfield loved Thin Lizzy.
Yeah.
So I did like a Thin Lizzy Jailbreak. I did Studio Break and drew the scary guy as the guy on the Jim Fitzpatrick album cover for Thin Lizzy Jailbreak. And it just kind of, I wouldn't say snowballed. It just kind of slow rolled. Everything was like, oh, DeVito will do this for us. And then,
so not to interrupt you, but like while all of this slow growth in the Metallica camp is going on, are you also doing stuff for other smaller bands, or what is happening outside of this at that point?
Yeah, for the most part, I'd still work for like Exodus. I would do stuff for them. Mostly like I redid their logo a couple of times. I did some merch designs for them early on, like Shovelheaded Kill Machine era. I did the whatever, Double Live Dynamo or whatever. It was an Exodus DVD, and where it had old pictures of Paul. They asked me to do Paul's memorial shirt, the original one with the hammer and sickle.
Okay.
So I would work for them from time to time, and also like the Ruffians. They were still kind of off and on doing stuff, and I would. And I got to meet more people as I took jobs at music merch companies after Tower and some of these other things. I actually fell into working for music merchandise companies. And I was kind of in recovery because I had a pretty severe drug problem early on. And actually Metallica was kind of the tail end of it. So I was really focusing on like, okay, I need a career path. So I applied to a couple merch companies. I fell in with this one punk rock merch company called Cinderblock. So I started designing shirts for and learning pre-production color separations for Green Day. The High on Fire guys came in one time and I did a shirt for them. So I started branching out as far as different bands and playing with different designs and designing for different genres, and liked it all. And that introduced me to other bands. So smaller bands, I wouldn't say, like Green Day maybe was a smaller band at the time. Smaller than Metallica is pretty easy to do. Yeah. Almost everybody was smaller at the time. And I'm still that 13, 14-year-old kid that walked across the courtyard where I don't say no to work.
Yeah.
Somebody wants my stuff, I'm like, yeah, I'll figure it out. I'll do it. Yeah, I want to do that. And like to this day, like I just did stuff for Bay Area Interthrational.
Okay. Yeah.
So I did their logos. Gary Holt, every once in a while, he loves doing these satanic kitten designs for his guitar picks. So I
Hmm.
do Satanic Kitten designs, and I send them off to them. I'm helping them with some other graphics. Uh, that that 1980s little bubble of friends and acquaintances, because some of these people are I would consider more acquaintances
Yeah.
or people that were in the room when I was in the room, so we were aware of each other. We never really like wouldn't go hang out or go to a football game together or anything. Some of them I did, but some of them, a lot of them I didn't. But that's still there. The Bay Area is still like, I mean, Howard will mention my name to somebody that was in the Bay Area, like Demmel, Phil Demmel. Oh,
Hmm.
that dude, DeVito, he did a shirt design for Sean for us for charity when Sean got sick. So I mean, the Bay Area is still very interconnected with the friends and the band. So
Yeah.
Boneless Ones, they're a local punk band, but uh, so they had me design some stuff for them.
Which, but wait,
Uh,
Boneless One has Home Dude from Forbidden in it, right? Isn't he in that band?
yeah, Craig Cicero
Craig.
and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Chris Contos, who I've known since we were like 15, 16 years old.
Hmm.
Chris was a stage diver from way back, and he used to hang with a buddy of mine, Toby Rage. And Toby was like the king of stage diving. Him and Andy Anderson, and all these guys. So I grew up with these guys,
Sure.
and it all somebody's got to say is, "Oh, you need this." Oh, DeVito, he's up in Portland now, but he still draws. He'll do whatever you want. You don't
Yeah.
care. So people get a hold of me, and I get a hold of them, and it's all very friendly, and it's funny to, before I used to worry about having to charge money, because
Hmm.
I always felt like, oh man, I'm working for Law's Rocket now. It's like, I don't want to, give me $20 or whatever. I would paint these fucking 12-foot long banners for bands and like charge them $40. And then
Yeah.
they'd lose it and I'd have to paint another one. And it was like, that was more of a pain in the ass. It was harder to ask for money.
Yeah.
Uh, because back then too, people were like, man, Metallica don't pay that kind of money, and or somebody, somebody would, and I didn't know what to charge, so I still don't. These guys are like, well, how much is this going to cost me? Because now they know I've worked for Motorhead, and I'm like, dude, I do the same thing I did with Motorhead. They were like, what do you want for this? And it's like an album cover for Motorhead. Dude, I should be paying you. You know what I mean? It's like I should be paying you. This is like a dream job. So,
That would be an interesting thing as well. Like how did the Motorhead thing come about?
well, again, I mean, being a fan is as
Hmm.
core as you can be,
Yeah.
essentially as a. I mean, you're a fan of a band. You have a connection with
Yeah.
that band, and that connection is not like paid for. It's not endorsed. It's not coerced. It's nothing. There's nothing artificial.
Yeah.
It's a real thing, and the connection to that band is somebody that says they're a fan says, "Oh, they do that song, Shout at the Devil," and you're like, "You dumb motherfucker." That's Motley Crue. What the fuck? You are not a fan. You know what I mean? I mean, that's kind of a dumb example, but that's
Yeah.
who I am. But
Yeah.
so, like, I got a job working at a music merch company, another one, and they had a roster that was like heavy metal fans, like Cream Dream. It
Yeah.
was like they had Iron Maiden, they had Slayer, they had all these bands and Motorhead. And
Hmm.
I'm like, I'm going to be working for a company that does stuff for Motorhead. Well, that's awesome. So
Yeah.
anyway, I'm all in. I get the gig, and they got me doing stuff for this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, hey, I really want to do some stuff for Motorhead. And they're, well, they kind of got somebody, and they don't really do very much merchandise in retail. and
Yeah.
we're kind of doing the retail stuff. There's some people we can introduce you that do their tour stuff, and you could submit stuff, but retail, we do them, and we do all the retail for all the different bands. But Motorhead don't really bring in because they're bootlegged all the time, so there's
Yeah.
no it's too hard. And I'm like, well, that's bullshit. It's like, the Motorhead shirts I own, probably 90% of them are bootlegs, but not because I wouldn't want to put money into Lem's pocket, but that's where I find a shirt and I'm like, I'm gonna buy it.
Yeah.
Or unless I'm at a show and I would buy the shirts. Um, so, well, I said, well, what if I just came up with some designs and can we run them by some people and see if they think they're cool enough that they might try them out. And my boss was like, you can do whatever you want, just you can't do it on company time. And I'm like, well, that's okay. I'm a fan. I got all the records at home. And he goes, I'll give you some assets and you can play around with some stuff. But if you got ideas, get them down and put them in. So on the weekends, I would just like, I remember when I was a kid, I got a Give Me Some Motorhead shirt. And I thought that was the coolest shirt in the world. So I redid that one. And then a couple other designs I came up with and kind of playing off the albums and stuff like that. So I put together a little presentation thing and I gave it to my boss. And he sent it out to a couple places like Urban Outfitters in Europe and another couple places. And one of them bit. Said, all right, we'll try that. We'll put it in our store. And this was about maybe 6 or 7 months before the Lemmy movie was going to come out. I think,
Okay.
or they just started filming it, and they were estimating about 6 months to a year. And
So
then
this was somewhere around 2010 or something like that. I think that was.
Yeah, it was 2009, I think,
Okay.
when I started like really kind of falling into that. So Urban Outfitters tried a couple designs and they sold really well. And so then it kind of took a little bit of a life of its own, and some of the other retailers saw the numbers. So they said, oh, we want to try a Motorhead shirt. And not like it was like, the Arab Spring or anything like that, but something was percolating, and then some ideas were being percolated around about this Motorhead Lemmy movie and things like that. And there was this kind of reemergence of awareness of Motorhead at a very pivotal time for their career. I mean, Lemmy was and Motorhead had kind of, I wouldn't say stagnated, but they hadn't really had that power surge of press that they got when the Lemmy movie came out. It really, I mean, that was like a big defining moment for them. And I just happened to come in and try to push some Motorhead shirts, maybe a little bit before the storm that was coming. So I lucked out.
Yeah.
And word got back to the band somehow that, well, through management, that they thought there was an error in their retail. They saw their retail numbers were coming up. Like they didn't usually get checks like that.
Yeah.
So my boss, who was very gracious, said, oh, well, we got this fan who works in the office, and he was pushing Motorhead stuff and got a couple through the hopper. And things are starting to move, and so one of the management team called me up and said, "Hey, you want to do some other shirt designs for us?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." So started doing some tour stuff, and things were working really well. And the design, Lemmy would have an idea, and he would sketch it out and send it to management. Management would forward it to me, and I'd redraw it and kind of realize it but it was Lemmy's vision sketch, and I would come and it worked. And Lemmy liked working that way. And I just happened to like be able to not add too much of my flavor into his designs.
Yeah.
And it was a good pairing. And management saw this as this is a very easy path to follow. It's a good formula. DeVito seems to work well with Lemmy. And even
Yeah.
just saying that and hearing management say that, I mean, it's a brain fuck. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I'm on a good path with Lemmy. I can die
I mean,
now.
just
Thank
just the honor of being the person that gets to bring his vision to life. Like that's an
you.
amazing
Oh,
thing.
and I can't even believe I'm doing it when I'm doing it, but I
Mhm.
take it seriously because it is Lemmy, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
don't get so excited you fucking send in, a child scribble drawing. It's like,
Yeah.
no, bring it. So, and I like it. I like a challenge, and I like the fire in the gut, the butterflies in the belly. That keeps me on point, and that's how I did all my other stuff. I mean, I got probably really strong stomach muscles by this time because I would say yes to some jobs that were like, dude, you're bit off a lot more than you can chew.
Mhm.
But that one was like, now this is my time, so I'm going to do it. Anyway, it worked, and so Stefan Shirazi, who was kind of Lem's main guy, called me up and said, "Hey, uh, Lemmy wants you to design an album cover for him." And I'm like, it's nothing but digital static in there
Yeah.
for the first 5 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, what? What? And he's like, Lemmy would like you to try your hand at doing an album cover for him. And I'm like, okay, you're shitting me. Uh, and he calls me. I'm at a kid's birthday party with my like 7-year-old son who's jumping
Mhm.
around in a bouncy house, and I'm standing there with all these other parents, and they're like, "Don't pull on Timmy's hair and shit." And this guy's saying, "Yeah, you're gonna do a Motorhead album cover," and that the words "fuck" and "you got to be fucking kidding me." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, and there people are looking at me. I'm like, "Oh, sorry, sorry." So I essentially took like the dream gig at a kid's birthday party to
Yeah.
do this once in a lifetime, and I'm like, oh my god. So he sent over some sketches, and I start right in on it, and in about 3 or 4 days, I put together a couple different variations on this album cover, and Lem loves it. He's tweaking it a little here and there, but
Mhm.
I got his sketch just like we did the shirts, and I did it pretty much true to form, made it a little bit more elaborate, but not deviating from the concept, and it just hit. And I did Motorizer, and I did the lettering and all that, and I mean, it was very hands-on, it was
Yeah.
very organic, and it was very me, Stefan, and Lemmy. And it all just kind of came into place. Uh, and then that was kind of like it was like Metallica on 10. It was like I would get invited to shows, and where at that point my relationship with Metallica was I was farther and farther away from the people that I felt were my connection with the band, meaning Lars, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lars and James, and we would talk. We would convert. I'd talk with Jason and I'd talk with Kirk, but the bigger they got, the less and less I got contact with them,
Yeah.
and I had more contact with management. Management would ask me to do stuff like I did something for Woodstock, and I did something for the Arctic, and it just things just kept coming, but it was never me talking on the phone with Lars or meeting him at the shows. It just I got so distant from it that I kind of fell out of out of love with the band, so to speak. And the music I still liked, but it was getting just my relationship, that fan level
Yeah.
got I went over a line, and I got pushed back over that line, and it's harder to go back.
that
It's harder to go. Yeah.
putting myself in that position, I could totally see that. It kind of sours things a little bit once you've been over the line and now you're back kind of where you were before. I mean, still getting to do stuff, but at the same time, it's like, well, I thought we were going to be buddies. Come on, man.
Yeah, and that's foolish on my part, and that's, I mean, to a degree, it is a business.
Yeah.
But that, like I said before, like we're talking about, I mean, you have a connection that's real with this band, and it may be fostered that it may be fostered in reality, but the reality is it's a business.
Yeah.
So you're not Lars's best buddy because he called you because he wanted some designs.
Yeah.
Even though it felt like, man, I'm riding a high.
But that's what happens when you're a huge fan. I've always said that the stuff that I do, my videos and me getting into the arena of doing interviews, which is essentially what I want to do most of the time. But I've always said I'll know that I finally made it if I interview Lars. But I guarantee you, because I'm such a huge fan, if I ever get the chance, my brain's going to go to, can we be friends now? because I'm such a big fan. Of course, that's what I want. I want to, I want to, start being invited to his kids' birthday parties or whatever, But it's, so I totally understand that. But it's kind of to pull us back a little bit, because we're on the Metallica thing still. Because the reason why we started talking was because you were kind enough to sell me these original Metallica fan cams.
You were kind enough to buy them. Thank you,
dude. Okay, well, it's just the fact that these are actually going to be incorporated into videos I make. Like, I'm actually going to be making videos about each one of them. But right here, you had these original, you said completely unopened or whatever. Or
I opened them to check the contents to make sure that when I originally got them, I opened it, but I mean, they weren't sealed. They were just, but yeah, they're complete. So, there's nothing missing out of them. And
so the contents inside of them. So you designed.
I didn't wear the shirt around town.
Sure. Yeah. But the question is so when it comes to your part in the designs, so I know that the cans all came with CD, VHS, shirt, some kind of trinket.
Or they all came with shirts.
Yeah. Or some kind of, it was a combination of things.
Sometimes it was a video, sometimes it was a video and a CD. Sometimes it was, I can't remember like a luggage tag. And like you're saying, there was a trinket.
Sure. So what level of involvement did you have in designing those things? And the can itself, the can also.
Yeah, I mean, so essentially so at the end of the Black Album tour, me and a friend who was in Spastic Children as well, flew over to Belgium, and it was the last two shows of this long Black Album tour, 3 years long. And Kirk invited me and Jumbo, my friend Jumbo, who was the singer at one time at Spastic Children. So we flew out there, go to the shows, hung out. I did a shirt for the end of the tour. And but we had a meeting. I didn't know we were going to have a meeting, but we had a meeting. It was Jason and Tony Smith, who was essentially the day-to-day manager on the road at the time, and myself. And I thought I was in trouble. Like I don't know what, drawn Lars strangely or something. I don't know what. But we had a meeting in the hotel bar, and they said, "Look, we just came out with Live Shit, Binge and Purge," and I think it was Live Shit, Binge and Purge,
which I have right behind me.
Yeah. Oh, cool. There you go.
Yeah.
But they announced the fan club somehow. I can't remember if it was in that or something, but it was in 93, and they announced the official fan club. So back to that KJ Doughton book.
Yeah.
KJ was the original Metal Militia guy who ran their official first fan club, fan club. But this was going to be the band's official fan club. And Jason and Tony said the band asked that I design the fan club shirt. So I was like, wow.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like another gig, and it's not just crew shirts. So anyway, long story short, that was my introduction. I subsequently did every membership fan club shirt from that point forward till about, I think it was Y2K, year 2000. So I did like whatever it was. I can't even, it's like 89. No, it was like 90. I think 94 was the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did one every year till 2000, 2001. But anyway, so Tony Smith and I started working very closely, and the fan club was the genesis of those fan cans. There was an original fan can, as you know, as a fan. I was going to say fan 40,000 times, and that's just how it's going to go. But the Japanese record company for Black Album put out a paint can. It was the Metallica fan can. I think they called it, or the Metallica can or whatever. So anyway, they came up with fan can. Somebody did. And so they wanted to do a fan can.
Yeah.
So, but their own. And so they said, look, we got this company. They'll print on these painter cans and we'll fill it with stuff.
Yeah.
And sell it to the fans. So we'd like you to design some. So I did like the scary guy, like just throwing up into this can because they said we we're just going to throw all this crap in there.
Yeah.
So I just, okay. So Metallica throws up in a can, you're going to buy it. So it's just like the scary guy throwing up into the can. But there's a shirt and a video or whatever in the puke going into the can. So
Sure.
they had me do that. And I was like, what's the shirt going to be? And, we're just going to throw in a crew shirt. And I think the first one was, I can't even remember. It was like the Trails We Have Crept or something. They put it in there. And I was just like, okay, so you have extras of those? Yeah, we had extras. And it's like, you have extras of a crew shirt? And then, anyway, that was the beginning of me kind of going, what's going on here? You guys are reprinting this stuff, repurposing it, and now it's not a crew shirt, it's a piece of merchandise.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress. That was part of my starting to get paranoid.
Sure.
So that's how that came about, is every year they wanted to come out with another fan can because it sold really well. It did really well. I don't remember how many cans they did. I think they did I
think it was like 6. I think they did 6 different ones, and then I don't remember how many they sold of each. I know they were in like the fan club magazine. They would do ads for them and stuff.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
But I think they only did like 6 of them. And did you have a part in designing?
I just did the 4 that I sent you because I said, hey, I like a little money, but send me one of. I used to ask them, it's like, hey, I did a crew shirt. I'm not going to get that much money. Can you send me a couple of the crew shirts? So I would amass these boxes of shirts, and that's what I did with Motörhead and all. I've got probably 800 shirts over the years that I've done for all these, and I don't have nearly as many as I've done, which is kind of weird. But my wife is grateful, but really upset that I have so many shirts. She wants them out of the house. But why couldn't you have designed postage stamps? That would have been a hell of a lot easier. And I'm like, I know.
Well, tell her I was glad to take some big ass cans off your hands.
No, hey, I'm glad because happy wife, happy life, man. There's a nice gap in my shelving that I'm going to fill up with more CDs and vinyl that I have laying around on my floor. I see that you got a few pieces of vinyl.
Just a few. Yeah, I'm a little fanatical about the vinyl collecting, and I mean, obviously the Metallica one too. I've become such a completist with Metallica stuff now that the fact that
dangerous.
The fact that I was
discompleted.
Yeah. So, but I was never around the time that the fan club started and these fan cans were coming out. I had no money for any of this stuff. I could barely afford to even go to shows, So now that I'm actually older and I have the means to do it, I'm just
Yeah.
anything I can get my hands on. I'm like, I'm wanting to get it. And so, yeah, it's just the cans are just another piece of my collection and me. Cause my love of that band has only grown stronger over the years. And
Oh,
I'm one of those people that after going through the period that a lot of people didn't like, Load and Reload and Saint Anger,
yeah.
those and Lulu and things like that, those are all things that made that band better to
Oh,
me.
yeah.
Because
They're the sum of the parts.
maybe I didn't like those things as much or certain little things here and there, but for some reason it just grew into this thing where now it's even more of an obsession than it was when I was
That's
13,
awesome, though.
which is insane. But so
It's
yeah, so
not
that's
insane, though. It's great. It's like that you want to. I feel cheated. Like I was talked out of being as much of a fan as I was. I still have conversations with Jason. Like we talk
yeah.
quite frequently. I still help him with projects from time to time,
Mm-hmm.
but we've become
Yeah.
friends with each other, and uh, we've had some conversations like where we're talking on a similar level. It's like, how did Metallica break up with us? It's like, what are you talking? Oh shit, you're right, dude. It kind of feels like that. And I go, that's the weird part, man. You love it and you miss it, or you kind of go, well, it was bad, or this I didn't like, and you overanalyze it, you psychoanalyze it. And I said,
Yeah.
dude, they got to have a Metallica therapy group. That would be just great. I
Metallica's
said, you and I
anonymous.
could be in it. Yeah, exactly. I mean, but it's so personal that it's like it's hard
Yeah.
not to, when good relationships go bad.
Yeah.
But
Well, that actually
my
brings
dog
us
decided,
that brings us to a good sort of wrap up point with one
oh yeah,
last thing, which is I kind of wanted to bring us to now because I'm interested in knowing like what you're doing now art wise. I know if I'm correct, you did designs for the Metallica 40th anniversary thing that they did.
yes, yep, I
So
did.
so
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, well, I had again kind of really quickly, I kind of felt like I had fallen out of graces with them, and
Uh-huh.
and really, I think I had, where it's like I stopped pursuing things, and every once in a while I would be asked to do stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but it became less and less, and then it just became not fun. I felt like I was so far removed from the band that I didn't have that same enthusiasm where I could feel like I could come up with something worth worthwhile for them as well as for me.
Yeah.
Um, and then I had kept working with Jason, and I felt again kind of that like I fucking miss it. I
Mm-hmm.
miss that feeling of being a fan. The Hardwired, I kind of started feeling a little bit more like a fan again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was getting excited about it. And then also the anniversary of the Black Album. So they asked me to send in some stuff for the box set for And Justice for All. They also asked me to do the same thing for the Black Album. And I put a very tongue-in-cheek email together to the management just saying, hey guys, yes, I'm still alive. I'm sorry I haven't called recently. I know you've been worried, but I still would love any opportunity to do some work for you guys. And anyway, I'm around. And I didn't hear back, and I said, okay, well, that I took my shot. And then a couple days later, and go by, and I get an email from management, and this one guy that I've been dealing with for years and years and years, and he was working with Q Prime, but now I think he works directly with the band. He goes, DeVito, sorry, been a little crazy trying to get some stuff together. Yeah, we'd love to see what you got. So I put together a design, and they loved it. And they said, "Yeah, we're going to use this for our 40th anniversary." And I was just like, "Oh my God, that's
Yeah.
huge." So uh, I became a fan again. It was like I got the the butterflies in the belly. I was really it
Yeah.
was like, okay, Mark, yeah, we'll take something. And so I sat down and I was drawing it and trying to get it together, and it just kind of all kind of clicked again, and I got to draw again, which was nice because I hadn't really drawn anything intensely for a band for a little bit for a band of that caliber.
Sure.
I hadn't done it for a while. I mean, a Motorhead was the last thing, and Lem passed away a little while
Hmm.
ago. But
Yeah.
um, so that fire in the belly, that butterflies came back for that one, and it, you know it felt good again. It felt kind of full circle for me, and I went and
Sure.
saw the shows, and got to see some familiar faces that I hadn't seen for a while. But again, I didn't get to go meet the band or anything like that. But my connection with Jason now, that's my full circle, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think eventually it would be great if I could have a couple minutes of Lars's time, whether it's to no real definite, kind of like, hey, wow, that I had no idea that you felt like that, or
Sure.
whatever it is. But then again, I have no illusions. He is, they are above where I feel like I could reach. So, and that's okay. Yeah, I've
Sure.
come to grips with it, and after working for Motorhead, it's I got no regrets, baby. I mean
Yeah.
that was a mountaintop kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
and it brought me back around on a fuller level to really feel like what I wanted to feel with Metallica, which was I felt like I was part of something,
Yeah.
not an organization, but part of a family.
Hmm.
Small part, but a part. I mean, I was the go-to guy for graphics, for backdrop, for tour credentials. I worked with Mickey D. I did his drum set, and now he's with Scorpions. I just went and saw him. I did a Scorpions kit for him. He's a sweetheart. And he's just the same kind of guy that he's always been. Very approachable. Very, we talk about stuff. We have fun. We joke. And then that's what I wanted with Metallica, and it just never kind of came. But I think I was too much of a fan,
Yeah.
almost in a way where I was a fan. Like, oh God, I would get tongue tied around Lars, and
Yeah.
it would piss me off. I'd be like, why the fuck can't we just have a fucking conversation? But
Yeah.
I wasn't mature enough, I guess, and I'm still probably that way with it. But Motorhead was a different story. It just felt natural and right at ease. So
Sure.
uh, yeah, everything's a stage in life. It's you just
Yeah.
one other stage in life. But I think that's great that you're a fan still, because to that level, because
Yeah.
that's what music's supposed to be. It's supposed to be an all-consuming like passion, and the
Yeah.
passion is I mean, you listen to it, you go to the shows, you buy the shirts, you get enjoyment from it. You wouldn't do it if you didn't get enjoyment from it. It's not to
Yeah.
make money. You don't turn
Uh,
around and sell it. And it's like,
no. Yeah, that
yeah,
I get comments sometimes on stuff and like, why are you taking the shrink wrap off of that? I'm like, because I'm gonna play it and I'm gonna touch it and I'm gonna open it. It's like that.
yeah,
This is not leaving me. Like maybe when I pass away, if my daughter just wants to sell everything, I'm like, great, that's hers at that point.
that's great. Yeah, yeah. I'm
But for
gone. I
now,
got my enjoyment out of it.
yeah. But to wrap it up, so
Yeah.
you are still doing art for some other bands as well at this point because
Yeah.
you
I mean, word of mouth and talking with friends and people that know people that are in bands, or I get introduced to different band. Like I was just flew back from California, and I bumped into a high school friend of mine that I grew up with, is Noah Landis, who was in this band Neurosis. but we knew each other just from being in high school together. He was the first kid with a big green mohawk that showed up at school.
Yeah.
So I mean, the people still ask me to do. I did a design for this band Charger. Matt Freeman from Rancid has this kind of power
Okay.
trio, very Motorhead-ish. And
Yeah.
anyway, Boneless Ones, like I said, I just did some stuff for them for their album, and you know, Craig LeCicero asked, and their manager asked me to do some stuff for not Dress the Dead, for this Bay Area International, and then local bike clubs. I do stuff. I used to watch house for the chapter president for Oakland Hells Angels, and other
Nice.
bike clubs asked me to do stuff for them. Yeah, I mean, I still keep in touch with people, and no one's beating my door down, but every once in a while
Sure.
I'll go and, oh, Rick Hunel from Exodus is in a new band called Die Humane, and
Oh,
he
okay.
hit me up, and I've been doing shirt designs for him. And some of the merch companies will reach out every once in a while. Like I just submitted a bunch of designs for Venom Inc. And there's always something somewhere, whether I have a personal connection with them or not. But word of mouth, I still do stuff. I'm going to be a school bus driver. I got my commercial driver's license, and I'm going to drive a school bus, and that's what I
Wow.
make ends meet. And in
Sure.
between that, I'll do a flyer for Jason Newsted here or there, or a Boneless Ones 45 album cover, or whatever it is. So
Well, that's
yeah,
that's that's great because it's just like the bands from that time period from the Bay Area. It's great that all of you are still doing it in some capacity. Um,
yeah,
so it's because it's just one of those things where like I'm not as old as you, but I'm in my mid 40s now, and I do run into a lot of people where the things that they were so passionate about in their teens and 20s, they're now like, oh yeah, that was in the past. And I'm like, well, that's kind of sad. And so
it
like,
is sad.
so I always appreciate those of us that are still like, sure, we've matured, we have families, we have jobs and responsibilities, but those
Yeah,
passions, were so sincere and powerful that they've just carried on with us into old age. And I love
absolutely.
I love seeing that stuff happen. So
I do
um
too. And yeah, and there's like the Murder in the Front Row documentary that came
yeah.
out. I mean, that was kind of like a yearbook for us. That's how a lot of our people that were in the movie that were when we talk about it, it was like a yearbook. And that's the nostalgia that I would say there's nothing wrong with nostalgia if
Oh yeah.
you let it consume your life and you can't progress as a person, like have a family and do these other things,
Mhm.
then you're not growing. But if you can keep it with you to enrich what you genuinely love it, then do what you love. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the life, no regrets.
Yeah.
If I could grow hair again, I would grow hair. But it's got a different purpose, and
Yeah.
so life is good.
That's
And
a yeah.
do what you love, because yeah, life is too short too. So
Agreed.
yeah,
That's a good way to end this. Yeah. So thank you so much for your time and
hey,
everything.
thank you.
And we'll talk again. Well, I might even have you back for something. I might come up with some reason to talk to you again. Because
Anytime, if you
yeah.
really got to hunt for a reason or just want to shoot the shit, I'm always there. I love talking about this stuff because, yeah, it's. I mean, I love talking with fans of stuff, because not like to show off or anything like that, but you share an experience, and everybody has a different experience. But when they're kind of shared,
Mhm.
it's interest, it reaffirms something in you, that that music is still making people uh, uh, excited, and
Yeah.
there's a magic to that.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Agreed.
it's all good. Not to get
Cool.
too dippy dippy at the end, but there it is.
I feel the
Cut
same
that
way.
part out.
So, but yeah. So yeah, thank you so much for being
thank
here, and have a great rest of your day. We'll talk again soon, sir.
Sounds great. Take care, brother.
All right. See ya.